Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with former U.S. Congressman for the state of New York, John Faso. John, we were just talking before the break about near-shoring, right-shoring or ally-shoring U.S. production away from China and other countries, perhaps. Maybe give us a sense, Canada always, we start wringing our hands whenever we hear language like that from our American friends, because of course, we're responsible for $1 trillion of Canada-U.S. trade. So should we be worried? Does this mean that Canada may not have the same trade relationship that we used to have with the United States?
Well, I hope not. And I think that one of the things I'm troubled by are some of the pronouncements that the president has made and others have made about so-called Buy America. And you really have to get into this question a little more deeply and again, explain this to the American people. It's all well and good to say Buy America, but if that excludes close allies like Canada, that's a big mistake. And if it includes allies in the EU, for instance, that's also going to be troubling. For instance, when I was in Congress, I opposed then President Trump's tariffs on Canadian steel, invoking a defense rationale as if we had something, we were threatened by Canada, which obviously we're not. But I think that hopefully the discussions between President Biden and the Prime Minister will bring a little more rationality to this. And I think that there's a recognition on the part of both sides in the United States that we can't afford to jeopardize relationships with a nation like Canada, nor should we with countries like Great Britain and the UK and the European Union and Japan. We have to be very careful about this. We have to be smart. And some of the provisions that were put into some of the legislation that was enacted last year, which particularly in the automotive sector, were making it so that goods that were exported into the United States would not be able to, for instance, in the electric vehicle sphere, would not be able to qualify for the tax incentives which the U.S. government was giving to consumers to incentivize them to purchase electric vehicles. And so that would be a mistake for us to do. And that kind of protectionism is the kind of thing that is not something that's going to be helpful to the free nations of the world and to our democratic trading partners. So we've got to be careful about that. And the other thing I know, Tony, that you and I have talked about before, it's really critical that we make sure that we have the raw materials
right,
and the manufacturing processes that are required to implement any strategy which calls for electric vehicles and other clean energy type of approaches. It would be foolhardy for us to mandate that we move to renewable energy while leaving ourselves dependent upon a country like China to deliver many of the components that are necessary for clean energy, whether it's electronic vehicles or whether it's windmills or solar, et cetera.
So that's a good prelude to what's happening coming up in just a few days. President Biden will be having a 2-day visit to Ottawa, speaking with Prime Minister Trudeau. I believe he's addressing Parliament as well. I was there when Vice President Biden addressed Parliament previous to that, when I was still a parliamentarian. So these things are big ceremonial aspects to this, but of course there's also a substantive aspect to this. Do you think that such a high level meeting will have an impact on some of these trade irritants?
Well, I hope it does, but I also think it's important to recognize that these meetings should be routine between allies. And I'm glad that the president is going to Canada now. Maybe it was because of the pandemic, which required that he didn't get there sooner. But I would hope that this signals a renewed emphasis on our economic and military and political ties. And so I think that it's going to be important for the two leaders to address issues like immigration, that the U.S. southern border is being
Right.
overrun. And I think largely because of some of the policies which President Biden has put into place,
Right.
incentivizing people to come. But we're also hearing stories about.
Just hold on one sec, John. We're going to take a brief break. It is an important topic, so I'll ask you to pick it up after the break.